There are moments in life when you look around and wonder why you feel so out of place. The world seems to be moving quickly. Conversations sound louder than they should, and people around you seem to carry on without noticing the things you cannot help but feel. It is not that you do not want to belong or that you cannot connect with others. It is that something within you processes life differently. If you have ever found yourself feeling like you live in between worlds, not fully fitting into the pace or expectations of others, then you know what it means to feel different in a way you cannot explain. This is often a quiet reality for empaths, who experience life through a lens of depth, sensitivity, and awareness that sets them apart. And while that difference can feel isolating, it is also what makes their presence so meaningful. Chapter 1. The Heightened Awareness. For empaths, awareness is not a simple act of noticing. It is an immersion. Where most people glance and move on, empaths absorb. They pick up on subtleties that slip past others, the way a voice wavers when someone insists they're fine, the way tension lingers in the air even when no words have been spoken, the way someone's smile seems painted on but does not reach their eyes. To an empath, these things are not background noise. They are signals. They are truths hiding in plain sight. This heightened awareness shapes the way empaths experience the world. A casual conversation might carry a dozen undercurrents, each of them registering quietly in the background. A crowded space is not just filled with people, but with energy, emotions, and unspoken stories. Even silence holds weight. Where others see emptiness, an empath feels presence. Life, for them, is always layered, always textured, always alive with details most people barely register. There is beauty in this. An empath might find themselves deeply moved by a fleeting act of kindness, something as small as someone holding a door or offering a thoughtful word. Music does not just play in their ears, but reverberates through their whole being, carrying emotion that lingers long after the final note. A painting or a sunset is not simply admired, but felt, as if their whole body becomes part of the moment. These experiences are not small to them. They are profound. They leave impressions that never fully fade, but this gift comes with a cost. What is vivid and beautiful can also become heavy and overwhelming. A stranger's sadness might sit with them all day. A tense room can feel suffocating, even when nothing outwardly has gone wrong. They do not just notice discomfort, they carry it, sometimes so much that it feels like they are holding burdens that were never meant to be theirs. What others shake off quickly, empaths continue to process long after the moment has passed. And it is in this space that the quiet difference begins to emerge. While the world moves at its pace, empaths remain with what they have absorbed. They replay conversations, searching for what was meant but never said. They recall small details, wondering why no one else seemed to notice. They carry what others discard, and in that, a gap forms. Not because empaths are wrong, but because they are tuned to a different frequency. That gap can make them feel out of place, as though they are standing in the same world as everyone else, but experiencing it through a completely different lens. This sense of being different can be isolating at times. It can create moments where they question themselves, wondering why they feel so much when others appear unaffected, why they seem to carry weight that no one else even sees. But it is also in this difference that their strength lives. Their awareness is what makes them capable of deep compassion. It allows them to show up in ways that make others feel truly seen, to notice when someone is struggling even before they admit it themselves, to offer support in ways that go beyond words. Heightened awareness is both a burden and a gift. It is the very thing that makes an empath feel separate from others, but it is also what gives their presence its rare depth. It asks much of them, but it also equips them with the ability to connect on a level many never reach. And yet, this very sensitivity, the openness that makes life so rich, can also become overwhelming. Because when every detail is absorbed, when every subtle shift registers, the weight builds. And that brings us to the next part of the journey, the struggle with overstimulation, where the very gift that allows empaths to feel so deeply also threatens to drain them. Chapter 2. The Overstimulation Struggle. For an empath, the world does not always come gently. It arrives loudly, with layers upon layers of emotion, noise, and energy, all demanding to be felt at once. What feels like background static to most people can feel like a tidal wave to an empath. A busy environment, a crowded space, even a day filled with too many interactions can quickly become overwhelming. It is not that they dislike people or activity. It is that every encounter leaves an imprint, every detail lingers, and when those imprints stack one on top of the other, the weight can become unbearable. Imagine walking through a marketplace or a crowded street. For many, it is bustling but manageable. For an empath, it is a storm of impressions. Fragments of conversations drift by and stick. The sound of a child crying feels sharp, almost piercing. The frustration of someone in a hurry brushes past like a heavy cloud. Even the pace of movement, the closeness of strangers, and the hum of constant energy can feel invasive. None of it is chosen, but all of it is absorbed. This is the heart of overstimulation. It is not just about noise or activity. It is about the emotional residue that clings to an empath long after an experience has ended. What is supposed to fade lingers. A tense interaction in the morning can replay all afternoon. A brief moment of sadness witnessed in passing might echo through their mind as if it were their own. Even small moments of conflict or misunderstanding can feel amplified, replaying until they are exhausted from carrying what never belonged to them in the first place. The exhaustion that follows is not simple tiredness. It is a deep emotional fatigue that can leave them needing solitude to recover. Where others might unwind by socializing or adding more to their schedule, an empath may need to step back and seek quiet. They are not withdrawing because they do not care. They are retreating because they have already carried so much, and their mind and body are signaling that they cannot carry anymore without rest. And yet, this need is often misunderstood. In a world that rewards constant productivity and endless availability, needing to step away can feel like weakness, when in reality, it is survival. Empaths sometimes push themselves beyond their limits, ignoring the signals of overstimulation until the overwhelm turns into burnout. They try to keep up with the pace of others even when their inner world is already overflowing. They say yes when they need to say no. They stay present when they need space. They overextend because the desire to show up for others often outweighs the quiet cry of their own needs. But this struggle reveals something important about the empath's nature. They are not fragile, though the world might make them feel that way. Their overstimulation comes not from weakness, but from depth. They experience more, they absorb more, and as a result, they require more recovery. It is a natural balance, though one that often feels out of sync with how others move through life. The lesson hidden in this struggle is one of rhythm. Empaths thrive when they learn to create pauses, when they allow themselves to step back and reset, when they stop measuring their worth by how much they can carry at once. Their sensitivity means that their energy is not infinite, and the more they honor this truth, the more they can protect the depth and compassion that make them who they are. Overstimulation may always be part of the empath's experience, but it does not have to control them. It can become a guide, a signal pointing toward what is too much and what boundaries need to be honored. It can remind them that recovery is not indulgence, but necessity. And it can teach them that their sensitivity, though it brings challenges, is also what makes their presence so rare and meaningful. This chapter of the empath's experience shows the tension between their gift and its cost. They feel so much, and that can overwhelm them. But in recognizing this, they begin to see where care and balance are needed, and that realization leads to another challenge, one even more subtle. Because when you carry so much for others and feel the world so deeply, it becomes easy to forget yourself. Which takes us into the next chapter, the difficulty empaths face in setting boundaries and protecting their own well-being without losing their compassion. Chapter 3. The pressure to conform. For many empaths, there is a constant unspoken weight that sits quietly in the background of their lives, a pressure to conform. It is not always loud or obvious, but it is persistent. It comes in the form of subtle expectations, gentle nudges, and the quiet judgments of a world that often values sameness over sensitivity. This pressure to blend in, to fit a mold, can feel exhausting. It asks them to dim their light, to silence their depth, and to soften the edges of who they truly are in order to match what is considered normal. Empaths live in a world that often rewards conformity. There is a deep social pull toward blending in so that discomfort is avoided, differences are minimized, and harmony is preserved. But for empaths, harmony is not the absence of difference. It is a balance between honoring who they are and navigating a world that often misunderstands them. That balance can feel like walking a tightrope. Every choice feels weighted, every word measured. There is an unspoken question in the back of their minds. Do I need to change who I am to belong? The pressure to conform is not only external, it becomes internalized. Over time, empaths may start to doubt themselves. They may question whether their sensitivity is something to be hidden rather than celebrated. They may wonder if their way of seeing the world is too much or too fragile. This internal pressure creates a kind of quiet self-policing, where the empath begins to alter how they speak, how they show emotion, and even how they think, simply to avoid standing out. This constant adjustment comes at a cost. Every time an empath suppresses a part of themselves, they chip away at their sense of authenticity. Over time, the accumulation of those small compromises can lead to a deep feeling of disconnection from themselves. They may find themselves living in a version of life shaped not by their own needs, but by what they believe others expect of them. That can create an invisible tension, one that is hard to name, but impossible to ignore. The pressure to conform is also tied to fear, the fear of being misunderstood, the fear of rejection, and the fear of being isolated. Empaths often care deeply about connection, so the thought of standing apart can feel risky. They may choose silence over speaking their truth, safety over authenticity, and agreement over expressing difference. In doing so, they protect themselves in the short term, but the cost is a deeper sense of invisibility. Breaking free from that pressure begins with awareness. It starts with recognizing how much energy is being spent to fit in and questioning whether that energy is serving them. Empaths can begin to notice when they are shrinking themselves and to gently ask, am I living for myself or am I living for the comfort of others? That question is a doorway to self-discovery. It opens space for the empath to examine their choices and to decide what feels true to them, even if it feels different from the world around them. The journey of resisting conformity is not a single act. It is a process. It requires courage to stand in one's own truth, especially in a world that prizes conformity. It requires patience, because change rarely happens overnight. And it requires compassion toward oneself, because breaking free of these pressures can feel uncomfortable, even isolating at first. But when empaths begin to release the need to conform, something extraordinary begins to happen. They start to see themselves more clearly. They begin to understand that their differences are not flaws, but gifts. They discover that belonging is not about fitting in perfectly. It is about finding or creating spaces where they are allowed to be fully themselves. The pressure to conform is powerful, but it does not have to define the life of an empath. Choosing to honor their difference is an act of courage and self-love. It is a choice to live authentically, even when it feels hard. And in that choice lies the freedom to step into a life where they are no longer shaped by quiet pressures, but by the truth of who they are. Chapter 4. Finding belonging in the self. One of the deepest journeys an empath can take is the journey inward. It is here, in the quiet and often overlooked spaces within, that they begin to discover the truest sense of belonging. For empaths, belonging is not always found in the external world. It is not always found in approval from others, or in fitting into groups, or in being accepted by society's expectations. For many, belonging is found first and foremost within themselves. This idea can feel unfamiliar at first. So much of life encourages us to look outward for validation. We are told that belonging comes from acceptance by others, from shared experiences, from blending in. But for the empath who feels different, those external measures of belonging can feel fragile and fleeting. What they need instead is an anchor that cannot be moved by outside forces, a connection to their own sense of worth and identity. Finding belonging in the self begins with self-awareness. It requires an honest look at who they are beyond the roles they play and the expectations they meet. For empaths, this might mean recognizing their patterns of giving, understanding how their sensitivity shapes their perspective, and acknowledging the ways they have adjusted themselves to fit in. It is about seeing themselves fully without judgment and allowing themselves to simply exist as they are. The process of finding self-belonging also requires self-acceptance. This is different from self-improvement. It is not about fixing who they are or trying to become something else. It is about accepting their emotions, their depth, and their differences as valid. For an empath, this can be transformative. It means they no longer have to shrink themselves to feel safe or to belong. They begin to see their differences as strengths instead of burdens. Part of self-belonging is learning to honor one's own needs. Empaths often put others first, and while this can be a beautiful expression of compassion, it can also lead to a loss of self. Reclaiming belonging means reclaiming the permission to prioritize themselves, to rest when they need rest, to say no without guilt, and to listen to their own truth even when it conflicts with others' expectations. It is a gradual process. There is no sudden moment of arrival where belonging is fully achieved. It is more like building a home inside themselves brick by brick through self-reflection, self-care, and small acts of integrity. Every time an empath chooses their own needs, honors their own boundaries, or embraces their own uniqueness, they add strength to that inner home. Finding belonging in the self also changes how an empath relates to the outside world. When they are grounded in their own worth, they begin to seek connections that honor them rather than diminish them. They become more selective with their energy and more protective of their inner world. This is not an act of isolation. It is an act of preservation, a way to keep their light steady while navigating the complexities of life. Ultimately, belonging in the self becomes a quiet source of freedom. It is the realization that they do not need to erase their differences to belong. They are already whole. They belong because they are themselves, and that belonging does not depend on anyone else's acceptance because it is rooted in the deepest truth. They have always belonged to themselves. This is the place of transformation. When empaths find belonging within, they step out of the cycle of seeking approval and begin to live from a place of authenticity. They stop asking the world to make them feel safe. They stop bending to meet expectations that drain them. They begin to stand quietly and firmly in their own truth. And in that standing, they create a life where they no longer need to fit in. They simply belong. Chapter 5. The Beauty of Not Fitting In. There is a quiet power in not fitting in. At first, it can feel isolating, as if you're standing outside a door that everyone else has entered. But over time, not fitting in can become one of life's greatest gifts. For empaths, this difference is not a weakness. It is a defining part of their unique way of experiencing the world. It is what allows them to see deeper, feel more vividly, and connect more meaningfully with life itself. Not fitting in means they walk a path that is their own. They are not bound by the need to conform to what is expected. They see the beauty in perspective, in noticing details others overlook. They hear the unspoken emotions in a conversation, sense the underlying currents in a situation, and understand the complexity of human experience in a way that is rare and profound. This is not a flaw. It is a gift. When empaths begin to embrace the beauty of not fitting in, they step into authenticity. They stop trying to mask their differences to gain acceptance. They begin to honor their own rhythms, their own emotional needs, and their own inner truth. This process requires courage because it means standing apart from the crowd and accepting that belonging might look different than what they were taught to expect. There is freedom in that choice. It is the freedom to live without the pressure to conform, to honor their own values and boundaries without apology. For empaths, this freedom allows them to create lives that are aligned with who they truly are, rather than who they have been told to be. They begin to find joy in their own uniqueness rather than searching endlessly for approval. Not fitting in also opens the door to deeper connections. It allows empaths to connect with those who resonate with their truth rather than those who demand they change. These connections are often more meaningful and sustaining because they are based on authenticity rather than adaptation. Over time, the empath learns that being different can be the foundation for genuine connection instead of isolation. The beauty of not fitting in lies in the richness it brings to life. It invites empaths to live with depth, to embrace their sensitivity, and to trust their own inner compass. It transforms difference into a form of strength, a strength that allows them to navigate life with more awareness, compassion, and clarity. Ultimately, the journey of not fitting in becomes a journey toward self-love. It is an acceptance of the fact that they are enough exactly as they are. They do not need to change to be worthy. They do not need to blend in to be valued. They are already whole.